Hi, Mr. Minnick here, helping my students. This is Mr. Minnick, helping my students prepare for Unit 5 test here in Intro in Computer Science Games and Apps Unit 5. And now we're moving on to the tracing code explanation of answers because there's another video that covered the true-false of this test. So here we are with some tracing code. There were plenty of worksheets with explanatory videos that you could watch as additional supplements, but since this is so similar to my real test, we may as well review these exercises especially well. So this class that's currently in my room right now, they're really good at this, so we're going to go extra fast. If you have to play this video in slow motion, go ahead and do that, but I'm going fast. Sum equals 0, done. I is a loop variable, it starts at 1, done. We go into the body of the loop, this 2 gets added from right to left, so a 2 gets added to 0, it's at 2 now. We go back up to the top of the loop, the default step amount is 1, which means you add 1 to the chosen control variable, which I use the letter I, even though I could have named it anything I wanted to, but I is traditional. So we add 1 to that, to the 1 to get a grand total of 2 there. We go through the loop again. Sum plus equals 2. Oh, how boring. It's always adding 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. This is an example of a counter statement. We're counting by 2s, but it's a counter statement. It's the same amount gets added each time. Anyway, we go back up to the top. We know that we're supposed to add that step amount of 1. But we would hit the brick wall, the upper high amount. You're not allowed to do that in Python with for loops. So you stop just short. You stop at that 2 and you don't actually send I to 3. Which means once you stop, you don't go through the loop ever again. It's done. There's nothing there anymore. So we circle that 2 and we circle the 4 because that's what the test question is asking you to do. Just for the record, if not indented, but down here, like under the F in 4, if there was a line of code that said print sum, the current value stored in the variable sum is a 4. So on the output screen, a 4 would print out. You would owe $4 to the Wawa cashier if that's what the cash register said, as it counted up the number of coffees that you just bought. Now, you probably don't drink coffee at Wawa, but sometimes I go and I get like 4 coffees. I would have to pay them for 4 coffees. Moving on. Number 2. This is a slightly different variation because I can already see the indented body line of code in the for loop is an accumulator statement. It's going to accumulate a non-fixed number, like other than 2. It's going to like be interesting and vary. Anyway, we'll get to that when we get to it. A for loop is a definite loop. I already know that this for loop is going to iterate and go around 3 times because 4 minus 1 is 3. But to get full credit on this test question, I need to see that you know what numbers end up being stored in the variables sum and I. So let's begin. Sum equals 0, check. For I in range, 1, good, check. Sum plus equals I, let's be careful here. I is currently 1, so it's like as if there was a 1 there. The 1 is being added in because that's what plus equals does. And that sum now, because it's on the left side here, has that 1 gets added into it. Then we go back up to the top of the loop where the default step amount is 1, so we bump I up to 2. We go through the loop again. The 2 that's currently stored in I, because I here is currently a 2 is being added in the sum. So that's a 3. Then we go back up to the top. The variable I has 1 added to it. We go through the loop again, possibly erasing if you're doing this with pencil. Never use pen on these kind of worksheets. I don't like that because it just throws you off. So I erase my pencil. I currently look at I and I see 3. See, some people try to do these in their head and they can't keep track of I and sum all at the same time. So on an AP exam, say next year, you make sure you do use pencil and you keep track of your tracings. So there's a 3 here right now, and that 3 gets added in the sum, which makes 6. We go back up to the top of the for loop, and then we put the brakes on because we don't want to make the I a 4 because that's not allowed. We are finished with this exercise, circling the 3 and the 6, and now moving on to the next problem. In exercise 3, it's going to have an equivalent problem on the test that's very similar to it. I can already see that I'm going to be stepping by 3. My variable I is going to step by 3. There is no easy formula that I want to teach you for knowing how many loop iterations there are up front. There probably is one if you're on the math counselor math team, but I don't want to go there. Let's just do this one by hand. So sum equals 0, good. I starts at 4, that's already been done for you here. Sum plus equals 1, that makes it easy because I just add 1 here to sum. I go back up to the top and I step by 3. That 4 steps up to 7. 7 did not hit the brick wall yet, so I do go through the loop again. This is the second time through the loop, by the way. Another 1 gets added in the sum. We go back up to the top of the for loop. We're about ready to add 3, but we see that that would hit 10 or take us over 10. If that were a 9 there, it would end up having the same final effect. We would be stopping. If that were 8, we would be stopping, the number 10. So really there's variation here that would all cause us to stop right now. So the 10 is there. We don't hit or go over the 10. We stop. We circle the 7 and the 2 just like we circled something up there. And that was just like a firecracker dud. It only went through the loop twice. I didn't really get my money's worth. But on the test, I usually don't give you any that trace like a lot. The AP exam, if you ever take that when you're in 10th grade or higher, they usually keep them small, like loops trace, iterate maybe 10 times at most, which isn't a lot. They're not going to like make it trace 1,000. But they might give you one where you have to see the pattern and do a predicting what if, in which case some people can figure out the future and work backwards. Some people can't. They just need to go through life one day at a time, which is fine. But they just might not be extreme software engineers that figure things out that are 10 years down the road. Moving on to number 4. Oh no, a while loop. It's an indefinite loop. It's one of those ones that there's no formula like high minus low. Now I am telling you to pretend that the user comes along and types in these numbers, but we usually don't know. We can't predict the mind of a customer. So sum is 0 and num is 0. Check, check, did that. While, pretty easy. If it's true, we go through the loop. If it's false, we stop. Is num greater than or equal to 0? Well, the first num is 0. It's currently 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is equal to 0, so this is a true, just like an if statement. So we do indeed go through the loop. So what happens in the loop? Curious minds want to know. Well, we got to look at the indented code, because Seamus knows that if code is indented properly and evenly indented at that in Python, it will work correctly. Well, the first line of code here is num equals input. So the person comes along and we all assume that the person inputs a 9. Be careful, num and sum look similar, but the s is different from n, so put your 9 here, not over here. And if I don't give you columns like this, you should just, as a good student, keep track of how much money you spend. I do that all the time. I take notes of my budget and how much money I spend, and I keep a running total, like an IOU kind of checkbook ledger. Well, anyway, back to my nice worksheet where I made the columns for you. Crossing out that 0, making it a 9. And now we are at this line of code here. If num %symbol 2. If num divided by 2 leaves a remainder equal to 0, then all of this is true. That's just a fancy way of saying hashtag if even, silly, if it's an even number, it leaves a 0 of remainder 2. So basically, we're looking at even numbers. Is 9 an even number? False. So when an if statement is false, we don't do what's indented there. So at this moment, we're not doing the sum plus equals num because that was false. 9 is not an even number. 9 leaves a remainder of 1 instead of 0 when divided by 2. We go back up to the top of the while loop. Is num currently greater than or equal to 0? Yep, 9 is indeed greater than or equal to 0. So this is a big fat true. We go through this while loop a second time. We erase our pencil sketchings from before, except for maybe this like even number stuff. That's a good reminder. And we check to see if 8 is inputted, and we're agreeing that 8 is plugged in for num. It overwrites the 9. And you just need this in here. Just trust me, you need the end. It's good style. Anyway, 8 is indeed an even number. 8 divided by 2 yields a remainder of 0. 0 is double equal to 0, so this is true. And finally, we get to do the fun stuff. You are tall enough to get on this ride. Hershey Park has rules, you know. And you do execute this. Num is currently 8. Check. 8. 8 plugs in here, gets added in to sum. Oh, it was still 0. Well, now it's 8. That's it. That was the ride. Now we have to go back and get in line again. Wait for another hour and a half before we can ride the super duper looper. Man. Anyway, at least we were able to do that once, at least. That's sum plus equals num, erasing everything else. Next time around here, we're agreeing because 8 is greater than or equal to 0. The next number that gets inputted here is 2. 2 plugs into num, so I cross that out, make it a 2. Is 2 an even number? Heck yeah. So we do take the 2 and we do add it into sum. Grand total of 10. We go back up to the top of the loop. 2 is greater than or equal to 0. So let's go around again. The teacher told you that you're supposed to assume that a -1 is the next number that gets inputted. Now that's called a sentinel value that will be on the test, probably as a true-false question. And this practice test, by the way, Kaylin, is highly recommended tonight and to watch these videos. I'll see you for the test tomorrow. We talked about that. So the -1 gets inputted, and the -1 gets plugged in here. And by the way, -1 is not an even number. Trust me on that, although if you want to go see your math teacher to get proof, that's on you. So this is false. We don't add the -1 in. And then we come back up to the top of the loop-de-doop. And -1 is not greater than or equal to 0. That's false, and that means we're done. And we print sum. Sum is, oh, we should have circled these. 10 gets printed with a space. Just anything that looks like a space here when I grade this. And then whatever num is, -1. Now you have to have that str there. We've already talked about that. I want to get into detail. And if on the test you're sloppy and you do this, I'm not going to see the space. So I might give you partial credit or not, no credit. If you do something like this and you put the num first and the sum second, like -110, I'll take a point off, maybe 2 points. So be accurate. Accurate. Be accurate. Okay, that's all I have to say about this in this video, tracing code. Although there were a lot of other videos this chapter that you could go over similar style questions that are just like the test, the real test.